The following broadcast is a presentation of Mount Zion Media Ministry.
Chapter 5. And since I don't have my reader, I guess I'll have to read myself. Mark chapter 5, and I'll begin reading at verse 24 and read all the way through verse 34 from the King James Version. And Jesus, beginning at verse 24, and Jesus went with him, and much people followed him and thronged him. And a certain woman which had an issue of blood 12 years, and had suffered many things of many physicians, and had spent all that she had, and was nothing better, but rather grew worse, when she had heard of Jesus, came in the press behind, and touched his garment. For she said, if I may touch but his clothes, I shall be made whole. And straightway the fountain of her blood was dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed of that plague. And Jesus, immediately knowing in himself that virtue had gone out of him, turned him about in the press and said, who touched my clothes? And his disciples said unto him, seest the multitude thronging thee, and sayest thou, who touched my clothes? And he looked around about to see her that had done this thing. But the woman, fearing and trembling, knowing what was done in her, came and fell down before him and told him all the truth. And he said unto her, daughter, thy faith hath made thee whole. Go in peace and be whole of thy plague. Amen. And the subject of the sermon today is a follow-up from last Sunday, and it is this: how bad do you want to be made whole? And this is a follow-up from last Sunday's sermon when I asked you the question, do you want to be made whole? And my prayer is that some of you said yes. Some of you said yes, and you even did the work. You went home and you took an assessment of yourself, and you start looking at your life, and you start looking at those broken places where you needed God's help to be made whole. And you even asked some other people, because I told you sometimes you can't trust your own grades on your paper, because we are inclined to grade ourselves high. And if nobody's looking, we'll even erase the wrong answer and put the right answer and give ourselves a high grade. I can tell you that because I am guilty of doing it. And so if you said yes, and if you've been looking at that process, here is what you have discovered in your looking. And really, I should say rediscovered, because you know it already. That when you start talking about working the process to be made whole, it is not easy. It is not easy. Real transformation is hard. And so what we do is we try, and sometimes we give up. And I've come to say, you can't give up. And we're in this new year, and we have this sense that we've got a fresh start, a new start. And how many of you are guilty of having these goals and objectives and resolutions, whatever you call them, and you start out on fire, but you fizzle out? Guilty as charged. Guilty as charged. I remember, like some of you, one year, in January, I bought me a membership at Planet Fitness or whatever the place is out there. And by February, they were just taking my money. Because to transform my body, to be healthy, to be whole, required some major work 4 to 5 days a week in there putting the work in, but I fizzle out. And so I come to say this morning that this idea of you being made whole is too important to fizzle out. Some things you can let go, but this idea that you can be made whole, you got to hang in here. And the question you got to answer today is, how bad do you want it? And it can't be just lip service. I want it, I want it, I want it. But how bad do you want it? And to help you unfold that answer, unpack that answer, I want to go straight to this text today and look at this woman and introduce some of you to her that don't know her. And hopefully you will see her, but you'll also see yourself. If you've been in church for a while, you've heard the story about the woman with the issue of blood, but I want you to keep your mind open, see if God can share something you may not have thought about before. So let me introduce you to her, because you've got to see her. And what you will discover as you see her, that she could have offered many excuses for giving up, but she didn't. That if she had fizzled out, nobody would have blamed her because of all she had been through. But she didn't fizzle out. Come meet her. She's a woman. She's a Jew in a society that marginalized her and ostracized her. Make it plain, Pastor. The culture in which she lived looked down on women. Ladies, I'm not saying I believe this is right, but let me just tell you, in this culture, this woman had no rights equal to those of a man. For example, if daddy died, mama died, all the property went to the men, and she could get none. If her husband took her to court to get a divorce, he could divorce her for any reason, but she couldn't take him to court to divorce him because women didn't have any rights to speak in court. He could slap her, and nothing would happen. Come close to me, because you're really going to get mad at this one. He could be unfaithful to her and have a relationship with another woman, and he could get a pass. But if she had a relationship outside of her marriage, the law said she could be killed. That all he had to do was bring her to the gates of the city, and the elders, the men, would stone her to death. Let me tell you one more, and then I'm going to move on. Well, let me just say, legally, no rights. One more specific one. If she got married and she found out her husband was not a virgin, she just had to live with it. But if he married her and found out she was not a virgin, he could divorce her or have her killed. That's how bad it was for a woman. And then she was a Jew living in a world occupied by Romans, where women had a second-class citizenship. And to say it plainly and succinctly, she had no rights legally where she could pursue her wholeness. And she could have just reconciled to herself, well, I'm a woman, I'm a Jew, I'm marginalized, I'm ostracized. No need to try. And then from a religious point of view, her religion put her in a place where she was also marginalized and ostracized because she had an issue. She had an issue of blood. She was bleeding. And in the culture in which she lived, a woman, it's in the book of Leviticus, Deuteronomy, a woman who was bleeding, whether it was her monthly cycle or just bleeding period, this woman, any woman who was bleeding, was considered unclean. Listen at me, listen at me. She couldn't come to worship while she was bleeding because any seat she sat in was defiled. And anybody who sat in the seat behind her became defiled. Nobody could lay in the bed with her because the bed she was in was considered defiled. So any man who wanted to keep himself clean had to stay away from her. She couldn't go to Publix to order grocery because everywhere she went, she had to let folk know, I'm unclean. I got blood in me. And so every day she's living with this ostracism. That's the bleeding woman. Y'all get back. Hey, sister, let me holler at you. I really would like to talk to you. I really would like to go out to dinner, but I got to let you know by law, the religion says I'm bleeding, and so I'm unclean, and so we can't talk right now. And it's one thing to be unclean 4 or 5 days a month, but it's a whole nother thing to be unclean 12 years. That's a matter, no. 12 years living with the ostracism of being unclean. And yet, this woman responds to her condition. Says, yes, I've got all these obstacles in front of me, but I want to be made whole. And the demonstration of how bad she wanted to be made whole was not in her words, but in her actions. So she said, here are all of these obstacles, but I have an opportunity in spite of my obstacles. And so I'm going to take advantage of the opportunity and give everything that I have to be made whole. How many of you, when you look at your situation and you see whatever it is that caused you to be marginalized, ostracized, that caused you to be looked down upon, that caused you to be limited in any way, and then you consider your issue, whatever that issue is, how many of you, looking at your situation, can only see your obstacles? I want to say to you today, you got to be able, like this woman, to look past your obstacles and see your opportunities. Pastor, what opportunity did the woman have? The woman obviously previously had been engaged in some kind of work, so she had some money. And her money created an opportunity for her to attempt to be made whole. She had time. She had 12 years of time, and she had to decide what she wanted to do with her time. And so she said, well, I'll use this time to try to be made whole. Time for her was an opportunity. And then there were physicians around her, and she saw them as an opportunity for her wholeness. In the midst of all the obstacles, she saw some opportunities. And you and I got to have eyes to see the opportunity, because one of the things that breaks my heart is when I encounter people and all I hear out of their mouth is what can't be because of the challenges. Your gender, your race, your ethnicity, your background, whatever it is, all the no's. Let me tell you something. You got to be like the woman. Your response matters most. Not what happened to you, but your response to it. So I ask you one more time. How bad do you want to be made whole? Told you the woman's actions demonstrated. So let me tell you what your actions need to look like if you say you really want to be made whole. You got to want it bad. Number one, what the latest story demonstrates is that she made being whole her number one priority. How you know, Pastor? How you know? When you look at the story, you know what her priority is, again, by what she decides to do with her treasure, her money, and her time, and her resources. The Bible says she took all of her money, and over a process of 12 years, she spent everything she had, trying to be made whole. You want to know how committed, how bad you want something? Look at the kind of investment you want to put in it to be made whole, to achieve it. I watch Shark Tank sometime, and one of the questions they always ask is, how much have you put in it? What kind of skin do you have in the game? And some of you want to be made whole, but you want somebody else to finance your entire wholeness. You don't want to invest in it yourself. You don't want to invest no treasure in it. You don't want to invest no time in it. You don't want to invest the resources that you have, and yet you want somebody else. But until you are ready to spend all you got, until you are ready to make it your number one priority, whether it's your treasure, your time, or talent, and make an investment in your own wholeness, it's not going to happen, because nobody, not anyone, is going to invest more in you than you're willing to invest in yourself. Don't bring your dreams to me asking me to help you, and you're not willing to go all the way to help yourself. Your priorities, and you're dressing and you're wearing this and that and riding and this and that and going this and that and doing those things that bring you pleasure, but what you really need, you're choosing not to invest in. You want somebody else to give you that. That's my priority, Pastor. And then again, her time and the resources, 12 years, just going back, because it's a priority. She's researching. The Bible didn't say physician, it says plural, physician. She's researching. She's discovering where these physicians are so that she can get to them. She's putting in the work because she wants to be made whole. And that clearly demonstrates how bad she wanted. What kind of research are you doing? Who are you pursuing? What are you pursuing so that you can be made whole? What is your priority? And I told you last week that part of what you got to pursue is Jesus Christ, your relationship with him. Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these other things will be added. And so is seeking him your priority? And you can't lie, because God sees. And even people see me. See, you can't tell me that seeking him first is your priority when you are more committed to your job than him. You're never late for work, but you're late every Sunday for church. There's always a reason why you can't show up for your assignment at church. But for work and the things that you enjoy, you're never late. You never have an excuse. When they call you, you come. And you voluntarily work overtime. You voluntarily go the extra mile of the way, because some of you are more committed to your work than you are to your own wholeness, seeking him first. You can't come to ministry meeting, but you don't miss those card games. Okay. Can't show up at ministry, but that place where you and the boys and the girls go. If the church asks you to go somewhere, you want to know y'all going to pay for it. But you do them little trips to them places y'all be going. You don't ask nobody to pay for that. You borrow. You do what you got to do to get on that boat, to get on that bus, to go do what you do. So don't tell me and him that he's first when it's clear that you got everything before him. Let me speed up. And so you got to make your wholeness your priority. But then there's something else about this woman that demonstrates her commitment to being made whole. Not only did she make the pursuit of her wholeness her number one priority, but she made the pursuit of her wholeness. She showed that she was so committed to it until she showed us her persistence, which means in spite of the things that she had to deal with, the discrimination as a woman, as a Jew, the issue, she would not give up. And it was more than that, because there's one thing in the text or two things that says to me how persistent she was. One, she spent all she had. And two, says she suffered many things of many physicians. Yet she was not made whole, but she didn't give up. She didn't give up. We give up and we give out too quick. Many physicians, and thank God for the physicians. This is no condemnation, But the woman was persistent. Okay, this one couldn't help me, so let me try this one. That one couldn't help me. That medication didn't work. She was persistent. And the Bible clearly says, and I've repeated it again, suffering. You don't get to be made whole without going through something. You don't get to be made whole without some no's. No, sir, no, ma'am. You don't get to be made whole without some denials. You don't get to be made whole without some backstabbing. You don't get to be made whole without being knocked down. But this woman was so persistent, her failures were not final. It failed here, but it doesn't mean God is not going to help me. It failed here, but it don't mean I'm giving up. I'm persisting. You're going to have to be persistent in your pursuit of wholeness. You have to stay at it. You can't stay and get knocked down. You're in the wrong game. Life knocks you down. I don't care how much you love the Lord. You get slapped down. Yeah. And then the last thing I'll tell you about this woman, as I try to speed up a little bit, she had her priorities right. She had this persistent thing down in there because she wanted it bad. Listen now. So for 12 years, she's going to the physicians. She spent all the money. And she did not get what she needed. Did she stop? Did she give up? No. She made a pivot. She pivoted. She changed her course of action. I've been going and going to these physicians. But I heard. Somebody know. I heard about a man who was doing stuff. Leave that alone, Pastor. You give me a shout. So let me. And so what she did, she turned. She pivoted from relying on her own resources. And let me tell you, you need to do that, but you need more than that. There were humans in place that God had put called physicians to help her, but there was only so much that they could do. And so she had to turn from them. Yes, sir. Listen, she turned from the physicians to the great physician. Yeah. And you remember last week I told y'all that the man had been at the pool, and that was what he was depending on. And so God had to come show him, it ain't in the pool, it's in me. And so part of what God is saying in this story, that I need you to put forth effort, I want to see that. But in the end, I need you to know where the ultimate source is. And let me just say this, I'm not picking at anybody what I'm getting ready to do, but because you're close to me, I'm just going to talk to you. And so you see this lovely couple here, and I'm certain that both of them want to be made whole. And what God is saying, as plain as I can put it, Mr. Chuck, if you want to be made whole, your wholeness is not in your wife. All right. Don't put that burden on her to make you whole. Yes. She ain't God. All right. She ain't your heart fixer. All right. She ain't your mind regulator. All right. She can't solve all the mess you got in your life. Don't put that on her. And she said to your lovely wife, I know you love him, but he can't make you whole. He broke himself. Two broke people equal broke. And so don't put the burden on him. Don't put the weight on him to fix you. All of your issues from the past, you can share them, but he can't fix you. And if you've been looking to each other as the sole person to just help you, he said pivot. Baby, I still love you, but I got to get some help you can't give me. Because what I need, you don't have. Yeah. What God is trying to say is, Cicero, I know you got bands just laying around everywhere. If y'all don't know what bands is, that's money, them $1,000 rolls. If I pull your leg up, you probably got about 10 bands in your socks. You got them in your pocket. And there's a false sense of confidence that your bands give you, your money give you.
Yes, sir.
And so, and the Bible makes it clear, she spent all she had trying to get some help. And she got it, but she grew worse. He's trying to tell you, your bands can't take you everywhere you need to go. Those of you that got your chest stuck out because your bank balance, your resources, what God is making plain, if you want to be made whole, I've given you that as a tool. Don't be mad. Don't hate yourself because you got it, but don't put your trust in it.
Yes, sir.
I know I'm all right. I ain't worried about what the government do because I got my money. I got enough saved. I don't have to work another day in my life. Let me tell you one thing.
Yes, sir. Come on.
Yeah, you may have it, but something can happen before the night over that will either wipe it all out or you'll realize it can't get you out of this. Why you think all these folk got money killing themselves? And that didn't just start happening. Why you think people jump out of penthouses? Because they discover that won't keep them.
That's right. You own it, Dad. You own it. God knows you own it. Yeah. Eat me up.
So you got to pivot.
Yes, sir.
Let me say to you people in here, and I'm in the you people. To us is, God wants us to know that if you want to be made whole, you got to want it bad enough that you got to turn from whatever it is you've been depending on. Don't say it out loud. Don't say it out loud, but tell the truth. What you been depending on? Young buck, how old are you? 28. Yeah, see, when you're 28, you feel youthful. You feel indestructible. You're going to be young and vibrant forever. And some young folk just depend on this youthfulness. And then you have this delusion when you're young that you just know everything. You ain't lived long enough to know just how much you don't know. And so you start depending on youth and that youthful mind. But God wants me to tell you and every young person in here, you better turn from that. Because that will let you down. That is not going to hold you. Oh, I wasn't going to go this deep, but let me just go because I got them clocked down. All y'all pretty ladies, where the pretty ladies at? Where the pretty ladies at? Go and wave your hand. It's all right. Don't be ashamed. Where the pretty ladies at? I'll tell anybody, if you want to see some handsome men, come to Mount Zion. If you want to see some pretty ladies, you come to Mount Zion, because there's some fine women in Mount Zion. Pretty ladies. Pretty ladies.
Thanks for watching. Be blessed and continue walking in the light.